Welcome to the Gray Range Podcast. My name is David Rousseau. We're going to explore the poetry of how we live, how we learn, and how we find our way along this strange path we call life. If you're curious about people, their stories, and all things savage and wonderful, join me on the Gray Range. As good as it's going to get, anyway. Get some shit out of the way here. A few things out of the way.
Put this on airplane. Cool.
Here we are.
We're here. We're back.
We're back yet again. Another episode of the Gray Range Podcast with myself, David Rousseau, and my co-host, Lucas Orich. Back from King of 2 Mile.
Oh, shit. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what,
Yeah, well, we'll definitely have to debrief that a little bit.
Yeah, we can get into the weeds on that one.
Yeah, for sure. Other than that, how you been?
Good, man. Just grinding away, getting some of the fall cleanup done.
Yeah.
Chopped the rest of my pepper plants down today. Picked all the last of them. Just kind of yard shit. It's October pretty soon, so it's time to get after it.
Yeah, same here. I was out in the garden today, pulled some beets and some carrots and my experimental pale potatoes.
How'd that work out?
I got, I don't know, like 25 little potatoes. I didn't prep my soil properly, so it got rock fucking hard.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So not a total disaster. I learned a lot. Like, you actually have to have opaque pails. If light gets in, your potatoes go green. So
okay,
I didn't know about that. So I learned a lot. It was like
I tried it a couple of years ago too. I did it in pots, and same thing. I got like quite a few little potatoes, but I was like, I see why people just fucking build a hill, plant it in the ground.
Yeah, I got a whole bunch in one of the above ground beds. It's like half of one of those beds. I think it's 6 hills. Yeah. So we'll get a decent amount out of that. Beets look good. I kind of crowded my beets a little bit. It's always one of those learning experiences every year when you're gardening. Trying to produce your own food.
Listen to us, we sound like a couple of fucking old dudes.
Yeah, I guess.
What'd you plant this year?
All I know is if I was subsistence farming, it'd be a fucking lean winter in the Rousseau household.
I'd be starving.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cheers, brother.
Cheers.
That's great.
That's tasty.
Yeah. Oh, wife and I went and checked out the PBR Peace Country Invitational bull riding here the other night.
Yeah, I saw you had a post up there. Had
a really decent
snapshot there. Pretty entertaining, eh?
Yeah, really decent. Yeah, I think that show runs almost 3 hours. They had quite a few people ride this year.
So it's a full evening.
Yeah, for sure.
Or afternoon?
No, evening. Started at 7 p.m. Yeah. Drank lots of free Pendletons.
Oh, nice.
It was fairly decent. Yeah, we had a really good time. Really good time. They put on a great show. I'd like to. If there's any semi-pro Grand Prairie area bull riders that want to come and chat about those fucking crazy motherfuckers that get on a fucking 2,000-pound bull. That's fucking wild shit, man.
Where do they? Is that out at Evergreen Park then?
No, right in town, right at the Bonnets Energy Center.
Oh shit, they do it right in there.
Yeah. Put on a really good show. Really entertaining. Typical Grand Prairie crowd. Grand Prairie crowds are quiet. Yeah. Everybody sits there quietly and watches till about an hour in when the buzz kicks in.
Yeah.
And then they start getting louder and louder and louder.
But, everyone's get that 3 beer. Like, all right, I'm gonna.
Yeah, exactly.
Come out of my shell.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a really good time.
Awesome. Very cool.
So, how was that King of 2 Mile, man? First of all, what is the King of 2 Mile?
Okay, so King of 2 Mile, I think it originated in the States. So this particular one's King of 2 Mile in Canada.
Okay.
And it is what it sounds like. You're shooting out to 2 miles with precision rifles. Okay. And so...
but it's progressively out to 2 miles. Like, you're starting at nearer distances.
Sure, yeah. So the way that it starts, and then I'll tell you kind of like, we didn't really know what to expect. I mean, you have to experience it to really get a feel for what it's about. Like obviously we're getting ready for it, and we're looking through internet history to find whatever we can find, but none of us knew anyone who had shot there before. So,
okay.
So you get down there and there's all the shooters, and it's random draw where they just put everyone into a spreadsheet, and they started at 29. So if you're number 29, you're shooter number 1, and then it goes from there. So there's a little bit of luck of the draw as far as weather conditions. I mean, obviously in the morning it's dead calm. That's when you want to be shooting.
Right.
Mid-afternoon sucks.
Yeah.
Or not mid-afternoon, kind of. There was a monsoon the day before.
Oh, okay.
And
that
so
was because it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So they actually delayed the competition by a day because there's lots of time to shoot.
Okay. Yeah.
Just because of the weather conditions, which was good because you wouldn't have been able to see anything anyways.
Yeah, I saw some pictures of the fog that was out there. That's in Tabor, is it?
Youngstown. So Hannah.
Yeah.
Nickelback famous Hannah.
Yeah.
Youngstown's another 40 minutes down the road kind of thing, and it's another 15 minutes down the road from there. Out by Blood Indian.
Right. Okay. So the nearest big city or big town is
Calgary.
Hat?
No, Calgary.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of straight east of Calgary.
Right.
Not straight east, but east enough that.
Sure.
Out in the middle of the Bald Ass Prairie. So.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes. So weather-wise, delayed by a day. So the next morning, the guys that shot it was dead calm, beautiful, man, nice shooting conditions. And then in the afternoon, it was a shit sandwich. You'd be looking at the targets as a spotter because you could glass from the side, and it's like, okay, we got a strong left to right. And then you'd look to another target, man, it's right to left over there, and geez, on that target, it's boiling straight up. So you're kind of reading your mirage. So it was just swirling in there. So the guys that shot in the afternoon didn't do that great. And then I shot late afternoon. By then we had a full value wind. Like it was a strong west wind. It's like perfect. Like it's easier to shoot in a constant wind.
Sure.
But to give you an idea of the difficulty, so target one, day one, is 1,306 meters. They had a 12-inch gong.
Wow.
Yeah, and so you shoot that.
No sheet of plywood out there.
No. So
at a click and a half.
No, man. So that's your first shot is you take one shot at that, and then you move on to the next target. So on day one, there's 5 total targets. Target 2 was at 1448, I believe.
Okay.
And then this is a bigger target. It's about kind of roughly maybe 40 inches by 30 inches kind of thing, somewhere in that ballpark.
Right.
And you got to shoot each target 3 times after the cold bore target. And you have to hit it to move on. So in theory, you could burn, you're only shooting 13 rounds on day one. So in theory, you could burn all the rest of your rounds on target 2.
Right.
And only the first 3 shots count for points. So if you hit the plate on your first, second, or third shot of that string, that counts for points. If you hit it on round number 4, you get to advance to the next plate, but that round didn't count. It just got you to move on.
And is it single shooters or 2-man team?
No, it's 2-man teams of shooter spotter. So you have your,
So you got somebody calling wind for you.
For sure. So I was teamed up with a fellow by the name of Chris. I won't say his last name, so I don't know if he wants to be super public, but fantastic guy. We had really good comms, and you go through that shooter spotter comms, like gun is up, spotter's up, stand by, send it, and call your corrections, and it was fantastic. We had a really good time. We both made it to target 4. Didn't have hits on target 4. So after 1448, it was 17 something, and then 2,099 and 2,199.
Wow.
So that's day one, and then they take the top 20%, which worked out to 9 shooters. So the 9 shooters for day 2, and I'd have to look. I think there was only 2 or 3 hits on day 2, and I think the last target was like 31 something, and I don't think anyone made it that far. Now, the thing that you have to understand in Canada is because of Bill C-21, we are limited to the guns that we can shoot, right? Like there's, in the States, guys would be shooting 50 BMGs and 416 Shy-Tacs and other
416 Barretts.
Yeah, 416 Barretts. Yeah. 375 Shy-Tac, like all of these guns that are made to do that.
So what are you shooting on this?
300 Norma is what we were shooting out of a KX Kraken.
Okay. Yeah, and what are you running for glass?
Collis.
Okay.
5 to 25 eyes.
So you're rigged up for that kind of competition. That kind of gun will shoot.
So that gun. So I guess this is kind of the backstory leading up. So we had typically those guns are manufactured with a 27-inch barrel, and the KX you can change the barrels on it in the Kraken, anyways. So what we had done is we had 32-inch barrels made for this competition, just trying to get all the gains, right? Like trying to get that extra 200 feet per second.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing is we got these new barrels, and they showed up. I don't know, I would say by the time we had them on the guns, it was a couple months before the competition. So we're starting to get crunched for time. And of course, with the range, we had the training cycle through the summer where we're, so there's me, 6:30 in the morning, racing out to the pit to, do some load development, and
Sure.
after work, racing out, and all of us were kind of doing it and participating in that. We had some great success, man. Like leading up to it, we were fucking pretty confident because we had a really hot load.
Yeah.
And it was working, and I tagged out to 26:20.
Oh, wow.
And we were starting at like 1674 meters, right? We're like, take a shot. We're like, oh, this is fucking easy. And then we walked it all the way out, walked it back in, and we're messing around. We're like, this is cool.
Yeah.
And then we flew too close to the sun. So we we kind of ended up cooking those barrels out about 3 days before the competition.
Oh, wow.
And just a poor understanding of it. Like everybody's read about, barrel burnout and how you lose accuracy and stuff like that. So 3 days before we're changing the load, we're dropping down by almost 3 full grains of powder, having to recalibrate everything. And so we kind of, we learned a powerful lesson there. Right?
Yeah.
Again, flew too close to the sun. So it was a lot of scrambling, last minute shit. And then, we had a great time. We're already planning next year, like what we're going to do and what the plan will be. And it was a good time. Yeah.
Beautiful. So, and to be a dick, how'd you guys place?
Yeah, so we were in the middle of the pack. There was 42 shooters, and I think we were like 20, 21, 22, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't do super well for a few reasons. Not excuses. We didn't shoot well. And it's tougher than you think, man. It's one thing to practice on your home range, and then you change all your environmentals, you go somewhere else, and it's just a different thing altogether. Yeah. And we didn't really know what we were up against. Like, I didn't know we were shooting a fucking 12-inch circle at 1,306 meters for one round to start. And that's big points, man. I was like, holy fuck, okay. But now that you know where the bar is set, I mean, you can train accordingly.
Yeah, for sure. And depending on where your range is at, if you're somewhere like, we got a lot of trees up here, a lot of the places where we're shooting. Yeah. And that kind of windbreak makes a huge difference. Yeah. Especially down in those areas, southern Alberta. Like,
so one of the things we noticed, like, there is no trees down there. Like, it's all open prairie. Yeah. So you get to shoot in the wind, but all of our wind calls were very good. Where we sort of, I guess, well, I won't say we, I'll say where I lacked a little bit of understanding is that when you're shooting at those distances, if you're the spotter, so shooter spotter team, you're one team. When I was calling for my shooter, what I'm seeing in the glass, it looks like he's got to come up 0.2.
Right.
The 0.2 moves it on the ground. You have to remember you're basically on a mortar team now. You're fucking launching this stuff in way on this big arc. Yeah. And so I probably needed to call 1.2 to get it up on the plate. You go 0.2, you're just moving it further in the dirt. So there's a little bit of, there's some other things at play when you're playing in the transonic and subsonic zones of these bullets, and it's way out there. Like, you're fucking launching them from a long way. So it was it was just a real eye opener, and just kind of like, and we got some great feedback from Rob and his cadre down there.
For sure. Excellent. And that was going to be one of my questions is how much is, because obviously, Rob Furlong and his guys, they teach this stuff. For sure. They've shot this stuff real world, because Rob Furlong did have the longest confirmed sniper kill for
a few years.
Yeah, I think he's down to like number 6 or 7 at this point, which is still freaking amazing. Yeah. But when they're taking that kind of stuff and adapting it into their teaching style, is there any coaching at all, or is it?
No, so they're there to run the event. The event, they're putting it on for the shooters, but they're a real class act. I mean, they're not coaching you while you're doing it. Right. But after, they'll give you some quick feedback. You don't have much time because there's another team right behind you getting set up. So they'll just give you a couple quick words of encouragement or tell you, hey, man, when I was getting set up, so when you get called, so you're in the hole, you're waiting to go. And as soon as it's your turn, you got 5 minutes to set up and 9 minutes to shoot. And so in my 5 minutes, I mean, I basically set my gun, my spotter gets a scope ready, and I'm like, I've got 30 rounds, but I only need 13. I'm like, okay, I don't want to fuck this up. I'm just going to pull all 13. And just have them staged by the gun. And I didn't really think about it. I just like piled them up, and one of the instructors, I won't say his name, he comes over, he's like, hey man, he's like, do you think it'd be even faster if you turned all the rounds the way that you're going to feed them into the gun? And I was like, thanks, coach. Like, so they're not afraid to throw out a little bit of like, they want you to succeed too. They want you to shoot well. It was just one little thing overlooked.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Because if I'm those guys, and I'm watching somebody getting set up or somebody, maybe struggling with an equipment issue, it'd be really hard not to say something. Like it's different if if they're doing what they did for a living and someone's trying to qual on a course so that they can get that to go further back to their platoon or whatever with that thing. It's going to be a little different. They're probably going to be a little harder. But in competition, I think they want more people to succeed.
Yeah, man,
more people that have a great time.
Which is why they bumped it a day, because they knew it'd be a shit show and they wanted high scores. They didn't want everyone to come out and shoot like a bag of dicks and then have no good results to put up.
Yeah.
And so then the other two little pieces of feedback we got when I was spotting, that's when one of the instructors came up to me, really great guy, I've known him for a few years, and he says, "Hey man, like you should have called way more." And that's kind of when it clued in, and I fucking knew it too. Like like I should have made a bigger, bolder correction. He's like, "You only have 3 rounds to score." He's like, "You're not gathering dope. You can't just walk it in." And I was like, "Fuck, that's right. We're not just gathering."
Yeah, you
dope.
want to bracket it, right? Like
for sure. So, and this is all stuff I knew, but sometimes you have to shoot it real world, like under pressure, before it actually sticks.
Well, and that's the cool thing about that is you're getting to play that game of applied long distance shooting. Under a little bit of pressure.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot of opportunities to do that really.
Yeah.
Right? Like unless you're fucking around with your buddies and someone's putting you under time, but that's a whole lot different than you've trained for months, you've run up your gear, you've put together a load, and you've driven, hours and hours and hours to go set up.
9 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'll just add, I got one other little piece of feedback
for sure.
From Rob, from the man himself. He told me and my partner, he's like, "Man, your guys' comms were spot on. That's some of the best communication I've seen today." So I'll just put it out there that like we both had been to Rob's school and the whole, gun is up, spotter up, stand by, send it, give your corrections. Okay, move to target 2, confirm red crossbar. Yep, red crossbar. Okay. Like we just talked everything out, rational, calm, and it fucking matters, and it paid off because we were pretty happy with our performance. But we had also rehearsed that too. Like we had trained together as much as we could in the kind of 2 or 3 months leading up to. And,
So it's a set team. Like you're going in there in teams of 2.
Yeah. I knew who my teammate was.
Were there any guys who showed up solo and got kind of teamed up?
Yeah, there was I think 2 shooters that showed up who didn't have a spotter, and so they just stuck those 2 guys together. Like, "Oh, cool, you need a spotter, you need a shooter. Like, cool, you guys are a team now." So it's open that way. So you could show up, even if you didn't know anybody, even if there was an odd man.
Yeah,
they're cool, man. Somebody's gonna spot for you. They'll accommodate it. They'll find a guy. Maybe an instructor will spot for you or something without, he's not going to give you all the whatever, but there's no way you can show up and not have a good time and learn something.
Oh, that's awesome.
And get to shoot. So
were there any really cool guns or any really cool pieces of kit out there that really was like, holy fuck, look at that?
Yeah. I mean, when you start looking at that shit, there's probably not a rifle on the line that's under $10,000. Like it's,
oh, of course.
So I guess it kind of depends on what your version of cool is. The guys from EM Precision, who are the other guys? There's a couple other whatever. I'm not sponsored by them, so I don't remember their names. But the some of the other precision builders in Alberta and around Canada, they show up to these kind of matches and they're running some fancy race guns, man, like fucking cool colors, like bright blue and all kinds of cool widgets and doodads hanging off them and big heavy weighted bipods and crossbar pieces on them and all kinds of shit. I don't know. But there's definitely some cool guns there.
What was was anybody running anything like optics wise that was kind of out of the ordinary? Because there's some different types of optics for that.
I think there was
ELR now.
March optics, and then maybe some Athlon stuff. You start to see some of that around, but it was your usual suspects. Call us. I don't know if there's any. Yeah, I think there's some Vortex out there, some Loophole.
Okay.
And then the biggest calibers out there, 375 enabler. There was quite a bit of 375 enabler. That's the biggest guns we're allowed to shoot.
Okay.
So there was, I don't think it was quite a third of the guns out there were enablers, but there was quite a few. And then if you're a nerd, you look at the statistics after. 6 people made that cold bore hit. That 1306. 6 out of 42 people. So you can run the percentages on that, and then you can look at like, okay, well, and how many of those were enablers, and how many of those shot in the morning, and how many
exactly right.
It's pretty interesting to go back through the data.
And that cold bore shot comes down a lot to the rifleman.
It is, and it also comes down to you know, it's one thing to hit a 3 foot by 4 foot chunk of steel. It's another thing to hit something 12 inches at that distance. So it really comes down to, marksmanship and also knowing what your gun does on that first, you know, that cold bore. Like, where does it go?
Yeah,
very often. And you can go down the internet rabbit hole of like cold bore versus cold shooter and all the other stuff. But typically a cold bore shot is, there's a reason everyone records that.
Yeah.
Because it's usually a little different than the rest. Yeah. So you have to know what your gun does. And
yeah, for sure.
Some of us didn't.
No, that's a great learning opportunity, man. Really cool that you guys got to put a team together and head down there. And,
yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Anybody else from this area down there? Was you guys the only GP team, or?
No, well, there was 4 of us from here.
Right.
So 4 guys.
So 2 teams.
2 teams representing kind of the Barton's crew, and then we had. I don't think there's anybody else from up here.
Was it all Western Canadians, or was it
people from Saskatchewan, BC, Southern Alberta?
Yeah.
I don't think there was any guys up from the States.
Nobody from like Ontario.
I don't think so. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
There was like. It was hard to go and just meet everybody. Like, you're kind of focused on your shit,
for sure.
Right? Like we're on the glass, we're spotting, we're on the side watching everybody else shoot. You know, and reading conditions, and you're constantly, as a spotter and the shooter, you're always looking at the weather, evaluating everything, updating your book, your scratch sheet for when you're actually shooting. Like, man, like, we're standing in line, like, guns are weighed in, we're ready to go, and we're still making changes. Like, man, this is a full value win now. It is like whipping. We're gonna have to change these numbers. Like, so your mind is kind of just on all of that all day. Like, there's some time to socialize, but really that sort of comes after you shoot. And we sort of shot later in the day, so we were more focused on that aspect. I think if you shot first, you could just chill all day. You wouldn't care what everyone else.
Are you getting an opportunity to watch the other shooting teams?
Not only from you can watch their shots, because at Rob's range where we shot from, we shot out of he's got like a shooting bunker, right? Like a shoot house, and everyone's shooting from there, but you can't be in there unless you're the shooter. That's where all the camera display equipment is, where they're the judges, all the spotters that are watching everything, and all the cameras. But on either side of that building, there's lots of space where you could be outside behind the firing line with all your optics set up, watching it. So you're kind of watching it, but you don't get to see what they're doing in the pit. You don't know. Right. Like, you don't know what their setup's like, what their comms are like. Like, you don't get to see any of that.
Oh, okay. Because that was going to be one of my questions. Was there anything that stood out from the people that performed well that they were doing, or gear-wise, or?
No, not really. It's kind of the only way to find that out would be to look at the score sheets after, and then just go talk to those guys. Like, hey, what are you shooting? What load are you running? Like, you know, you can pump them for as much info as you want if they'll give it to you.
Yeah, for sure. I've always just at other shooting competitions, there's a lot of behind the line BSing about what are you running, what are you.
There's a certain amount of that. Like, we shot. There was some other known like people that we knew that we've interacted with over the years, because we're a small store, but we know a lot of people. So we did talk to a lot of other people, and, you know, hey, what are you shooting? No, I'm shooting this, I'm shooting that. And, you know, so there's still enough of that going on, but you just don't get to see them shoot unless you're on their team.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's pretty fair. That way, if anybody's got, specific comms or something like that. Then
and some guys are really good at gaming the game, right? So you don't want to, I guess from a competition standpoint, if I had it all figured out, locked in and dialed in, I don't want to give that away.
Yeah, and I think by the nature of that, like that precision shooting by application, it's pretty solitary, right? You're a 2-man team, you're on a rooftop, you're in a hide somewhere, or you're hunting. It's a pretty solitary thing. You would be a
2-man team. I don't think you'd be very effective as a singleton, just because like, very often as the shooter, you can't see fuck all. Like, you can see the target. And depending on the weather conditions, you might see your splash, but a lot of times you're relying on your spotter.
Yeah.
Like, that is the eyeballs. That's big brain behind you. Being the shooter, that's the best. You're just a dumb trigger puller. You have to be good at it, but there's not a lot of thought involved. Like, up 0.4, left 0.4. Just do what you're fucking told. Being the shooter, easy. Being the spotter, it's a little nerve-wracking.
That's where the sausage is made.
Yeah, and I think that's, I'm sure someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but generally speaking, the senior, more experienced guy on the team is the spotter for a reason.
Yeah.
Because he knows how that shit works. He's the guy picking up trace or swirl. He's the guy seeing where the bullet is going. Even if you don't see it, he can pick it up.
Yeah, I would imagine, and I think from what I've read and what I've heard, your spotter is going to make or break you in those type of competitions.
I would guess, yeah. And I would guess in the real world too. I am not a sniper. I'm not a. I'm a complete civilian. I just like guns and I like to play with them. So I all of my all the knowledge I gain is firsthand, but it's not. But I don't have any.
So did anybody shoot 2 miles? What's that meter wise?
3,200 meters would be, because there's 1,600 meters in a mile.
Right.
Like 1.6 roughly. I mean, give or take a few meters.
Makes sense.
I'm sure, but it'd be 3,200 meters. I don't believe anybody made it that far. Like actually, I should have been better prepped. I could have had this all teed up on my phone. I told you, well, on day 2.
No, this is good. I was curious more about your experience. Offhand, do you know what the longest shot was?
I think somebody tagged 25-ish.
Okay.
2.5
clicks.
Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark. So
that's out there, man. Wow.
Yeah.
So, what's your biggest, like, next year if you go shoot this thing again?
Oh, I'm going.
So what's the number one? What was one thing you walked away with going, I am going to, or I am not going to? I'm not going to shoot my barrel out before we go and competition.
Sure. I mean, I guess some lessons learned there, like, I'm going to shoot a lot of Creedmoor. You can learn all the same lessons shooting through the transonic and subsonic and push the game.
Okay.
I can spin the other barrel on, shoot for cheaper.
Yeah.
But I think the moment was like just had an excellent time. Like with my teammate, we just gelled, man. Like we clicked.
Right on.
And it was just such an adrenaline rush. It was so good. It was so much fun. Right. And there's not much that gives me that kind of like, holy shit, that was rad. Like I don't get that very often.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's just good people, like just a whole bunch of people all there for the same reason. So those are the kind of people I like to hang around. So
yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things that I was thinking about here recently is how important it is for people in general, but I would say men specifically, to set these difficult goals and then to move forward and do it with other men pursuing the same thing.
It's incredibly important.
Yeah, because a guy can do a lot solo.
Yeah.
But when it comes to these kind of fraternal activities, they're really, really foundational for a dude's identity.
Yeah.
And where he stands in his own mind. It's like there's always a social hierarchy that you're a part of, and you kind of choose where you land in that hierarchy.
Yeah.
Right? And the way to build yourself up in your own mind is to go and do difficult things with other guys who are either better and or worse than that and then people kind of coming in green, like everybody has a first time at something.
Yeah.
Everybody's a white belt first. So those kind of things like shooting and martial arts and if you can find a group of guys to hunt with or a mentor to do that kind of thing with, those kind of touchstones in a person's life, especially for dudes, are really super fucking important.
They are, yeah. I don't know how much value, like personally, I would get out of going and doing something like that by myself. Like if I didn't have anyone else to go with, but I really wanted to do it, I'd do it because I'm that guy. I'm not afraid to walk through the doors and go do something.
Right.
But most things in life that are enjoyable to me, I do with my friends and teammates, like in more of a team dynamic, because there's that sense of accomplishment. I'd rather be part of something than do it myself. Like I'm not against doing it myself. Like that's not what I'm saying, but think of all the best memories you have growing up and doing things. You're probably with other people. Like you're hanging with your best friends and getting into trouble and doing dumb shit.
Yep.
You were always with your homeboys kind of, and I would rather be part of a team and go hang out and do that than do it by myself.
Yeah. And I think
I get more out of it.
Yeah. When you succeed as a team, the highs are higher. If you fail as a team, then you're still supported.
The nice thing about if you went and did something like that by yourself and just completely failed out, like you just had a wrecker, the struggle bus pulls up and fucking throws you out the back door and you're by yourself.
Yeah.
Well, you'd probably just never do it again. But you go part of a team, you can have a wrecker on the team, and the boys will always pick you up, man. They're always going to be like, they're going to be supportive. They're going to shit talk you, but they're going to encourage you, and they're going to build you back up. You're still on the team. Like, it's no,
yeah.
So I would always rather be part of a team.
Yeah. I think it's important to succeed and to fail in a group, or as a group.
Yeah.
Because like you said, like your highs are higher when you succeed. You've got someone to share it with.
Yeah.
And then if you struggle or if you fail, you've got this group of people that are, they're going to shit talk you.
Yeah.
You know, you might get a nickname, but
you might,
but they're going to help you out. They're going to lift you up and get you back to where you need to be. And that's part of that mental choice is you're going to choose whether or not to fail or succeed. And there's some pretty deep intestinal fortitude for a person if they're doing stuff on their own. Like to constantly be the person who's having to, build yourself up, have that discipline, take the L, take the W.
You also don't know what you don't know. So when you shoot with a team or do anything with a team, whether it's shooting or not, your team holds you accountable.
Yeah.
And I don't mean in a negative way. It's just like, hey, that's stupid. Don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Or in many cases, like I'm also okay being on the team, being the least experienced on the team. That's great for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm amongst my peers and I get all this learning.
Yeah.
I get the firsthand education from professionals. So
yeah, and somebody can pull you aside and give you their experience and say, hey man, I just totally shit the bed on X, didn't do this, didn't do that, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, well I better check my shit, right?
The other thing too is if you don't have an answer, one of your teammates will. Might not be the answer you want, but even if it's not the answer you want, it works towards problem solving, right?
Absolutely.
When you're operating on a team, there's always a sounding board. It's like, hey guys, what about this?
Yeah.
And you'll get 3 answers back if it's a 4-man team. Cool. Well, I got 3 answers, and now I can start working towards solving the problem, right?
Sure.
Or somebody will have that answer, like, oh yeah, I already ran into that. Here's what you need to do. Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefit towards taking that kind of stuff on, and I think, like I said, it's really important for men especially, because when you're in your life, you're in your job, you're in your relationship, you're in your family situation, and you have struggle. If you're a guy who's a lone wolf, and you don't have a depth of resources to go to for advice or just a vent shooting the shit or something outside of that, like what happens in the dojo or what happens on the range or what happens out in the field, and you don't have those relationships, that trust that's built up with somebody else, what I find is those lessons that are learned in those places are brought back. They're brought back into your work, and you're brought back into your family.
Oh, for sure.
And you're not sitting there questioning, who am I or where do I stand in my own life? Because you've gone out, you've done something, you've attempted to do something anyway, and either you succeeded or failed, and you've got other dudes there who you respect, who let you know where you're at.
Yeah.
And now you're coming out of there, and there's no wondering in your head about, who am I and where do I stand in the world, because you've got some feedback from people that you love or you trust.
Yeah, and
telling you where you are.
And it puts you in an elite group of people. Like, we're the 0.01%.
Sure.
That's who's doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's extremely fun, and it's an extremely huge morale boost and confidence builder. A lot of people will just stay at home.
Yeah.
So that's not me. I like to go out on, go have the adventure.
Absolutely, man. So. Absolutely. Yeah. It's one of those things with life where you gotta, like, we're in a kind of place where adventure doesn't choose us in our society, and we can have a pretty tame domestic life. You can go to work, you can go to your job, and come home and do whatever. And I see it more and more where people have a pretty insular life. Like their adventure is they're gonna go shoot around a golf, or they're gonna take a Mexican all-inclusive vacation.
Yeah. But
there's very little risk and there's very little reward for what they're doing. And that's fine. I get a lot of people are going to do that. I'm going to imagine that there's people out there who've very early on decide that, they have an experience, something outside of their control happens in their life, and they go, holy fuck, that's not for me, right? Give me the white picket fence. Give me the 9 to 5. Give me the cubicle. I want to know where my food's coming from.
Get home. I'm going to put on my sweatpants right away. Turn on the TV.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to
get my comfort chips.
All my big experiences are going to be virtual. They'll be simulated. It'll be the next Marvel movie or the next video game that comes out. In my mind, that's okay, but I think it diminishes us as people when we're not striving for something else. Because I think everybody at some level still has that primal yearning, right, to go out to do the thing.
And you know what? I'm extremely blessed. Like, my family supports me going on these adventures. My employer, supports me going on these adventures and contributes to it. But I get to go and do these things, and I know that not everyone's in a position to be able to do that. So I consider myself pretty fucking lucky. Like, how cool is that? But I also make my own fortune too, as far as I work towards it. I'm going to do it, and I plan my life accordingly. And it's
right.
Yeah, so I'm pretty lucky I get to go and do it.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, when you're doing an activity where the entrance cost is a $10,000 rig, right? So you got an $8,000 rifle and $5,000.
You could get away with less. My comment was simply that, like, when you look down all the guns that guys are walking around with, like, holy shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, the shooting sports in general,
there
is a bit of a barrier for access.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. And that is time and money. We've talked about that before. But in my experience, like, for myself, like, I'm not a person who came from wealth. I just took the money that I would have spent on whatever other pursuit I had and put it towards that. And there was some sacrificing where there was some saving and stuff like that to do these courses, and probably like a whole bunch of ill-advised debt that was taken to go and do stuff like that. But I mean, those are the payoffs and the experience that you have.
Yeah, I think fewer people struggle than I would give credit to, as far as, like, people that don't have money for this, don't have money for that. But, if you're the guy who smokes, goes to Tim Hortons every morning, stops and gets a pizza on the way home, like, there's all kinds of disposable income. I'm not a wealthy man. Like, I fucking simply prioritize, like, okay, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, and therefore I will have money to do the things I want to do. So, So I think it's in society in general. I'm, like, not shooting specifically, but when I guess, like, in the shooting sports, the barrier is time and money and training. Like, you have to, got to get that PAL. You got to jump through a few check boxes.
Yeah, for sure.
There's something out there for everybody. It's not an exclusive club. It's an exclusive club if you don't want to be in it. But it's not exclusive. Like, anybody can get in the gang.
Yeah, well, I always liken it to, like, I see people quite a bit, kind of my age and younger, dudes, single, struggling a little bit with trying to find their place in the world, and especially trying to find their tribe.
Yeah.
To people outside their family. As you get older, your family kind of moves in its different directions, and life takes you places. And, I think that one of the biggest ones is martial arts. Probably the lowest barrier to access ever. Your mat fees are pretty cheap, and
it's the hardest thing to do, though.
Yeah, generally you're going to run into a good group of people.
Yeah.
But that could be anything. Like, when I talk to people, I'm like, well, what are your interests? Like, what do you like to do? And the thing is a lot of people's interests are these kind of insular things.
Yeah.
They're like, well, I like video games. It's like, well, that's well and good, but that doesn't get you out of the house and doing something.
Yeah.
Like, do you like hiking? Well, yeah, I do, but, don't necessarily have well, that's the thing. Like, the one thing that social media gives us is this ability to network. And this ability to reach out to people who have similar interests. And you can find a group of people who have a similar interest than you, who are looking for people to do those things with.
Yeah.
And you can start making relationships, and you're probably going to meet some fucking creepy people, but that's going to happen regardless of whatever you're doing. But you will eventually build a network, and you'll build relationships, because life is just all about relationships.
And I would say most, especially not only like outdoor type or physical activity, like whether it's a dojo or a shooting group or a shooting
fucking
range.
frisbee golf or whatever,
sure,
man.
Like
you'll
golf,
find people.
Fucking any of it.
Yeah.
Most people will readily accept newcomers and rookies where they're like, oh shit, you want to get into this? They'll just flood you with gear and knowledge and all the things you could ever want. Like, I don't know how many new shooters that I've helped like kind of get started, and they're like, oh, I don't know what to buy, or I don't have this, or I don't have the money. And guys are like, who gives a fuck? Just show up. We'll lend you all the gear. Like, everybody has 25 of everything because we're all too dumb and we already own everything.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's the biggest barrier to entry on anything is willingness to do it.
Yeah,
willingness to step outside your comfort zone.
It has nothing to do with financial, material, like, and if it does, it's very low key. But very often, anybody who's enthusiastic to bring new people along for the ride in whatever their discipline is, that financial barrier disappears. Yeah, well, exactly. It's like, oh, you want to do this, but you can't afford it? Just come anyways. I'll fucking pay for it. I don't care. Yeah, like, I don't know how many shooting classes, martial arts classes, and other things over the years. If I'm interested in it and somebody wants to get into it, I don't know how many I've paid for. Where I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. Yeah. Oh, I'll tell people I got a 2-for-1 deal. No, I didn't. I just don't care because, oh, cool, you're into it now and you want to try it. And some of those people, they tried it and they didn't like it. Oh, whatever. Yeah, and the thing that gets me quite a bit is this reluctance just to interact with the other people, right? Like, you could do anything. You could, like, fucking quilt making. Yeah. Right? You could go on Facebook right now and find a quilt making group and show up on their Wednesday night quilt making night and sit there and learn a new stitch or whatever it is and get yourself started. And you'd probably leave there with like 5 pounds a yard and the basics on how to start making a fucking quilt. Sure. You do nothing. You could just show up there and people would gladly give you knowledge and give you the means to get started. Yeah. And all that's lacking is people's curiosity. Just that little bit of curiosity to just get them over to hump a little bit outside of their social anxiety. I wonder, though, is that because we always kind of talk about, like, we're Gen X and we kind of have a different worldview. But I wonder, like, I don't think it's unique to our generation or the generations behind us. I think there's always a little bit of social anxiety where people are, I don't want to say they're not comfortable in their own skin, but it's like the world in general just does such a shitty job of preparing people to just interact at a level where it's... Yeah, well, I think the one of the things that I've learned, or the biggest lesson that I learned was about relationships, was that everything is relationships. When I'm at work, people that I work with or work for me, my relationships with them dictate how well or how badly each day goes, or how well or how badly we accomplish each task. At home, obviously, it's relationships. I didn't figure this out until my fucking 30s, man, late 30s, where I was like, oh, the relationships I have with my friends, with this, with that. And then you're on Facebook, you're like, do I have to check it? I'm in a relationship with all these people. They're my coworkers. No. But I mean, it's that's the currency. Yeah. Right? It is your ability to meet people, work in a group, but that all comes from knowing your self-worth. But when you've got social media and, you know, various cultural, social, political, religious groups out there, or movements or ideologies out there whose job it is to undermine all that. Because in order to get you on their team, they have to undermine who you are first. They have to tell you, you don't know who you are. Society doesn't let you be who you are. And you have to question who you are, because everybody who tells you who you are is lying. And I'm the only one who knows who you are. I'm the only one. I've got the secret to unlock your inner self. Yeah. Right? All this kind of shit. And that's what gets people all fucked up, where they don't know whether they're being used or abused or lied to or made fun of. I thought we were making quilts and now I'm in a cult. Fuck. You know, fucking, hey, man, that could happen. It'd be a comfy cult, though. They'll all be fucking warm as shit. Yeah. But I think that's what happens to people where they kind of miss this. It's kind of funny because you can't get someone out to, you know, get on the mats or get in a shooting competition. Like, we're not in a shooting competition right now. But you can get people like to go and see some fucking celebrity at $8,000 a seat. Yeah. Like by the tens of thousands. And that blows my mind. Well, I think there's a little more anonymity there, as far as like, you're just like, they'll spend the cash to do something where it's, to kind of reach out and touch a star, right? Like whether it's a rock concert or a hockey game or some other thing where they're just more likely to do it because I think it's more societally acceptable.
Absolutely.
You don't have to go through all the built-in excuses, right? Like if you're going to a Taylor Swift concert, everyone's like, yeah.
Well, that's just it. And like, you can say,
who cares?
I went to the Taylor Swift concert, and there's social currency from that.
Yeah, but if you're like, hey, I'm going to go to the CD boxing gym and just check it out, people are like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, why would you want to do that? What, do you like violence? Like,
yeah,
you
exactly.
Or I'm going to try quilting. If you're like, why would you want to try quilting? Like, I'm in the movie club, like, or whatever it is. Like, there's always that. But if you go to the bigger box thing, it's mainstream.
I'm doing the thing everyone's doing.
Yeah, we're all doing it. This is normal. So.
Yeah, and I think that
stick another needle in me.
Yeah, that's just it. I think that we're in that way we're led astray, right? Because those kind of things. If I'm just another face in a crowd of 60,000 people in a stadium watching some giant rock show, I get to lie to myself and say that I have a relationship with the rock star because I paid the $800 or whatever for the seat, and they looked at me, and
it is pretty cool though. Like depending on the venue, do you know who Jacoby Shaddix is? The lead singer of Papa Roach.
Right. Okay.
He sweated all over me. I was like, this is fucking rad. I was at a Death Punch concert, and they opened for him in Lethbridge. Sure. And Jacoby's he's a fired up dude.
Yeah.
He's running through the stands and singing, and I'm just standing there kind of rocking out. And my brother, he's like, I gotta piss and get a beer. I'm like, see you later. So 3 minutes after he leaves, Jacoby's up in the stands and he's rocking out. He's got his arm around me. I'm like, this is fucking wild. My brother comes back. I'm like, you'll never believe what happened. Of course he didn't, but he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, fuck, it was cool.
You weren't live streaming it on Facebook?
They took away my camera.
Oh, good.
I actually had a camera. I was like, I'm going to record this shit. They took it away.
Yeah.
But that was before. That was like, I got caught way early. I wasn't super smart, but yeah. So there can be a little bit like Jacoby
I'm not going to shit talk anybody who likes to go to concerts and stuff like that. I mean, they're cultural events, right? I get it. But when you trade cultural events and you have those as your personal touchstones, it's like, well, what did I do this year? Right? Did I run the 5 miles I wanted to run? Did I pay down my credit card debt that I wanted to pay down?
Yeah, there's different levels of attendance. It's different when you go and you're just being entertained, or when you go and you're working on some piece of self, like some character development.
Well, so I mean, the barrier to access to that is only money.
Yeah.
Right? So if you can buy the experience, does it, like, it has some value, but does it have as much value where paying for the experience, like, spending time in the wilderness, say you want to do a hike, you want to do an overnight, you want to summit a small fucking mountain, it's going to take you 2 days, it's going to take you some money to get outfitted.
Yeah.
Maybe not a whole bunch. It's going to take you a little know-how. Maybe let's just wander off by yourself. People go missing all the time. But at the end of that, small, monetary thing, but you get to the top of that thing, and that's you that did that.
Yeah.
Right? The barrier to access of that was you going out to do the thing. Now you've done it, and you can check that box. And now Christmas Eve or whatever comes around, you're sitting around with your family, and they're going, well, wait, what'd you do this year? I fucking climbed a mountain. And they're like, well, we went to see Taylor Swift. Right? And it's like, I'm not going to say one experience is greater than the other. I just think that one is going to provide more foundational benefit to a person and letting them know who they are in the universe than another one.
It's not for me to judge other people's experiences, but let's say now suddenly you're faced with an adverse situation and you're drawing from your life experience. And so now you're in the office next week and this problem comes up. I mean, unless you got into a fist fight or rescued somebody at the concert, or there was something that went on that was out of the ordinary and you were part of it, like maybe you learned a life lesson, but you probably just got entertained, and that's cool. But if you're the guy that climbed the mountain, and the fog rolled in and you got a little bit spun around for a while and you had to think of your plan, and you ran out of water and had to purify some at the creek, and you went through a bunch of little lessons along the way, and then you know what? You felt good about it because you got back to the truck and you survived it. There were some tough moments. Man, you did 12K. Good for you. Maybe you did 15, whatever it was.
Absolutely.
And you feel good about it.
Yeah.
And then you're faced with this other problem. You're like, I can hike a mountain, bitch. Like you just kind of like now you have, there's more to your character. Whereas if you were just simply entertained,
well, especially I believe there's some discomfort involved.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're getting through, I mean, one of the best fishing trips I ever went on, I caught no fish.
Yeah.
Like out with my late father-in-law, maybe at Moberly Lake out in BC.
Yeah.
2 days out on that lake, didn't catch a damn thing. Second day, the moment we launched the boat, it started raining.
Yep.
It did not stop raining until we put the boat back on the trailer.
Yep.
And we were out there all day, not even a nibble. But I got back, we were camping there, tent camping, got back to my campsite. You know, I had tarped it off really, really well. It held up well to the rain. Started a big fucking fire.
Yep.
Got in warm clothes. Poured a fucking glass of whiskey. Sat in front of that fire. And felt that I'd had the best fucking day.
Yeah.
That I had in a long time. And those are memories that stick with me. Right? I've been to a lot of concerts. And those are cool. I've played a lot of video games. Those were cool too. But none of them became a foundational memory of, hey, I went and did this thing, was uncomfortable,
right?
Didn't quite make the task, but still came back.
It might be a checkpoint, but it's not a milestone in your life. It's not something that's important.
But when I look back on good days, like days I remember feeling the best I ever felt, it's sitting around that campfire in warm clothes, you know, knowing my camp is dry because I did the work to build the nice camp the day before.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm not going to eat any fish because I didn't catch any, and I don't know if I would have eaten the fish out of that muddy ass lake anyway. It's normally nice and glacier fed, but they had a lot of runoff that year. You couldn't see shit in that lake.
Okay.
But whatever, you know, I brought food. I'll be fine at a mountain house meal or something, right? Like I'll be okay. It's the memory. It's the discomfort that led to the good feeling that got somewhere, rather than, you know, I paid some money to have an experience and then come back, because those consumer level, they're kind of surface level experiences.
I think too, like you could draw parallels, like even like you could parallel that, like let's say the Taylor Swift concert, for example, or whatever, just any other
shit talking Taylor Swift.
Yeah, fuck her and her big gnarly jet. But let's be clear. I mean, it could be a life-changing moment. Let's say there's a couple of kids from a small town. You know, they don't know any, like they don't have a whole lot of life experience. They drive to the big city and it's all fucked up and weird. And they got, a fucking 4 lanes, 8 lanes in this goddamn thing. How do we get in here? And they kind of go through the adventure.
Some farm town kids.
Yeah, because when I was younger, man, we went to some concerts and we were just some dumb fucking kids from high level, man.
Yeah, absolutely,
man. And those, I still remember those parts of it. The performance was cool, but it was more, the road trip with the boys and everything. So I don't want to trivialize the rock concert. I'm not anti, you can still learn by going and doing
absolutely.
that.
And I think to caveat this is, I'm not trying to shit talk the consumer level experience, because it's the ancillary experiences along the way that make the experience.
Sure,
right? It's like you get out of the show and you can't remember the fuck you parked your car, and it's everything around it that is the experience, right?
I think the difference is between like just going and paying to be entertained, or paying and challenging yourself. Like it's two different categories of.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that kind of exposure with somebody who goes and sees like a really high level musician doing something, and that sparks something in them where they want to go and try that for themselves. Yeah. Not to shit talk those experiences, but I do think that when you compare the access we have today for all this kind of input, all this stimulus that we can get, people, and I think especially men, gain less from that surface level exposure and much more from something deeper. But I think we've insulated ourselves a little bit away from it, so it's harder for a lot of men to access. I notice here, like where we're at, like went out to that PBR bull riding.
Yeah,
there ain't a lot of like beta male dudes at the bull riding show.
You wouldn't think so.
No. Like there's some big ass corn fed dudes. That's the way that is. Those guys have all had experiences.
Yeah.
But you go to, the comic book store or whatever, right? you're seeing a different level where people's experiences are more virtual, right? They're more sensory rather than experiential. And that's just life, right? You grew up in the suburbs, and your, biggest event growing up is, either high school or what your parents take you on vacation or whatever. And you're kind of yearning for that kind of thing, but just the access for it gets barred a little bit because, guns are bad, or, you don't want toxic masculinity. So you can't learn, martial arts or something like that. You can't take the boxing course because people are going to be like, well, you want to fight?
I just want to say that masculinity is not toxic and guns are fucking cool.
Oh, fucking A. Like I said, you go to the bull ride and it's nothing but toxic masculinity and free Pendletons, man. It's fantastic. But I think those things need to be celebrated in such a way because, a lot of men right now, like I think right now we're seeing a huge amount of suicide amongst men, especially in like the 30 to 40 years old. Guys are getting the middle part of their life, your family starts to go a little bit, like the people that you care about, they start dying. Yeah. Right? Your connections to the people you grew up with are a little bit more strained. You just got a lot more distance between, I think, a few more years between anything. Maybe you're on your third, fourth relationship, your third, fourth, fifth, sixth job, or your first job, and you're just not finding the fit. And I think the group, the tribe, the male,
I was gonna say, like,
group kind of self-corrects a lot of that stuff.
It does, because if you have a group of dudes that are always checking in on you, shit talking you, like pulling you out from your cave, like, hey, when are we doing this? Let's go do that. Like, it's really hard to. I think it's hard to lose your way if you got a great peer group. Like, you're not. I mean, obviously it's not the cure, but it certainly helps. I think the more people are surrounded by people that want to lift them up and go do cool things, it would be hard not to have a good time and feel good about yourself.
One of the things that I thought about here recently is one of the reasons why this is kind of a newer phenomenon is because we have smaller families and less and bigger communities, right? So you look at families that still exist, especially this area, right? Coming from rural areas, they're a little bit bigger. You've got 2, 3, 4 brothers and sisters, right? That's your own microcosm right there. Yeah. Like if you're off base and you've got 2 older brothers and an older sister or a younger sister, whatever, like you're getting your shit checked every day, right? You're getting, you make a mistake, you're going to know about it. You know where you are in the hierarchy. You're going to know where to move. And if you've got a more close-knit community, then you're going to have a tighter friend group. But I think with society now, we've got smaller families, 1 or 2 kids, most of their friends are from public school, and now maybe a lot of that time that you spent interacting is virtual. It's not, super one-on-one. You're not getting that. And you're going to see more people wondering, like, who am I? Where do I fit in with the world?
Well, I think, like part of it too, and we've discussed this a little bit before, is that a lot of the personal interactions that we had growing up, like the now our kids, the generation behind us, a lot of the world's been digitized, so they don't necessarily have to navigate. They have a whole new set of problems to navigate.
Yeah.
Right? Because now a lot of their relationships are a little bit more digital. Like even with their friends, people they see at school, they might have this awkward face-to-face relationship with somebody that really grew up 4 houses away. But online, headsets on, they're fucking stacking bodies in Call of Duty, and they're like cool. But face-to-face, and I just think that's just kind of, they got a whole different set of problems that they're going to have to navigate. And it's not unique. I mean, the exact circumstance is unique that it's more digital, but it's not really any different than any other generation. I don't think having to navigate some weirdness like it's.
From what I understand, there's and from a little bit from what I've seen is there's a bit of a move to get away from a lot of it. Like I don't think that social media and a lot of this stuff was going to hold the same type of hold on generations that to come because it'll have existed. It'll be like the telephone right? Or the television, right? Like it's one of those things that's just there.
Yeah.
It's always existed. It's not a new thing to them.
I think it's already seeing that because I think is it, what's the latest generation? Z? That's a lie.
Sure.
I think I'll probably fuck this up, but I think it's Gen Z is not really into social media.
Yeah.
Not like our generation, not like Gen X. And the millennials are into it.
Yeah.
And then Gen Z, they're kind of like, fuck it. Like,
especially because like, you're not going to do what your parents did.
No,
if your parents are like fucking living up their Instagram account and you're like 11, you're going to be like, fuck that shit.
Facebook? You mean Fagbook? Like, they don't want nothing to do with it, man. It's like, okay, cool. Like,
yeah, and that's pretty much how they're rolling these days. Like kind of eschewing that stuff that came before. I know down the street from me, driving the other day, I see two kids on bikes that have a 4x4, or maybe it was a 6x6. It was a 6x6 post, about 3 feet long, and a 2.5 foot piece of plywood.
Fucking right.
On the sidewalk. And I'm like, there is hope for humanity
yet,
man.
I don't think.
Broken arms and broken collarbones coming.
You can't crush that out of them.
Oh, man. That's amazing. That's the kind of stuff we want to see, man. Yeah. Those are the kind of kids that will grow up and hopefully have those experiences that they want to move through life with knowledge that they earned, right? Things that they did, whether it was, fucking taking that quilting class or whether they fucking went out and shot the fucking king at 2 Mile, right?
Or went to the Taylor Swift concert.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Do your thing, man. For me, I can't see myself doing it, but if I was, a 15-year-old dude and this girl I liked wanted to go to the Taylor Swift concert.
Well, that's the thing, right? You got to support those kids.
I'd rob a bank to fucking go to that Taylor Swift concert.
Of course I'm taking her to the concert.
Absolutely. Or if I had daughters, and they're like, we're going to Taylor.
With who?
I would probably be going to the Taylor Swift concert because I wouldn't be letting that fucking 15-year-old boy anywhere near my little girls, right?
That's right, yeah.
But, I think that's just the way it is, man. So we got a new website.
We do, yeah. So the I was going to add it at the end, but let's talk. Do you want to talk about the website specifically?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So Jeremy with Creative Vibe.
We should pause.
Okay.
We should get a couple of beers.
Fucking I like this idea.
All right. before we switch gears.
This is why I needed a co-host.
Yeah, well,
I just keep talking, mouth would be all dry.
We're gonna dive deep into this website here. Cheers, bro.
Cheers, man. Yeah, so Jeremy with Creative Vibe, who was on the podcast before, great dude.
Yep.
Super patient with me because I'm a total pain in the ass to work
working with you is fucking terrible.
Yeah, I feel sorry for everybody. Don't talk about those relationships, man. I am nothing but the guy who takes things out of the emotional bank account.
Yeah. He's this non-committal artist guy.
Yeah.
Fuck.
So, he worked with me. We got it up. So, www.thegrayrange.com.
Yeah, man. I scrolled through it. Fuck, it looks good.
Yeah.
So
he did a great job. So that's going to be the home to, all the future writing, the podcast, and a coming web store. Working on some merch for the podcast, some cool stuff for people who want to support.
Yeah.
And so there'll be probably something like a subscription monthly newsletter where I'll write a few things every month.
So is that part of the blog or is that a separate thing?
It'll be because
there's 3 main categories, right? We got the that I could see on there. We got the podcast.
Yep.
Which will have the chronological, like every podcast we've ever done.
Be able to access all our podcasts
and then
there.
It's got the blog. What's a blog for people that don't know what a blog is?
Okay, so I'm not even sure what a blog is myself. It's basically going to be writing content.
Sure.
So there's going to be a little bit of poetry on there. There's going to be a little bit of essay editorial on there. Mental Health Mondays, which was a post that I was doing on Instagram.
That's right. Yeah.
I got quite a bit of feedback on that. Mostly that is like me kind of prepping my week. So I sit Monday morning, I'm having some coffee, and I'll write something where I'm trying to kind of form out my thoughts going forward into the week. And usually I'll tie it into some meme that I've seen where it's just kind of like, okay, I'm using that as my instigator for talking.
Sure.
and write out some of those.
So it's a little bit more than just fuck, why me?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And maybe if it is just fuck, why me, then it's like, well, why am I thinking fuck, why me?
Yeah.
Right. Just getting something in there and just diving a little bit below the surface a little bit into, for me, it's kind of like an exercise that keeps my head straight.
Sure.
And for other people who read it, they got back to me and had some feedback that other people were finding it beneficial. They're like, hey, I really like these.
Cool.
Keep doing them. And then something like a newsletter. And the newsletter basically would be kind of like a catch-all for new stuff about writing, new stuff that maybe we're doing, new
upcoming
stuff with the podcasts. Yep. And
sneak peeks at merch.
Yeah, and possibly some live stuff. So the new book is done. Waiting for the last proof for the last piece of the cover art.
Title's still classified. Everything's still classified till launch.
Yeah, I want to keep this one pretty close to my chest. It's I'm pretty happy with it. It's it's out there. It's you won't forget that one once I say it. So yeah, once the cover artist gets back to me with the final proof on that, it's basically like press the button and it's published.
Cool.
So all that stuff is basically done now, and then I'm gonna look at possibly doing a live show. So somewhere in Grand Prairie, we'll see how that cooks up. If I can find a venue that'll support some guy to come and read poetry and bullshit for an hour and a half or something like that.
Yep.
We'll see how that goes. But the website's going to be a catch-all for all that stuff, and then who knows? Who knows what else will come? Right? It's just the idea of having a landing page. So www.thegrayrange.com. That'll be the place to see everything that we're doing, and who knows what the future will hold, man.
Cool. So you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Castbox. That's the one I always forget to say. So be sure to comment, like, subscribe, all that shit. You can follow us on Instagram, at X, even Facebook, Fagbook.
Yeah, it's out there, man.
Again, like Dave said, you can check out the website, www.thegrayrange.com, where you can find all the cool things. And, of course, the book. You can buy the book on Amazon.
Yeah.
New Unknown, the new book that's coming. Did you read a piece today?
I didn't, so I'm going to read one right now.
Fuck, all right.
Yeah.
We got an outro with it this time because we're all we're too excited to crack a beer.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd have the new one in my hands by this time, but I don't mind waiting a little bit to get the right one. Make sure that cover art's on point.
It's got to be perfect for the title.
Yeah, I think so. All right. I think I got one right near the end here that I wanted to read. All right. And this one's kind of good because I was just fucking gardening today, so this one's called Growing Season. Some malign mornings, dressed softly in soft, wet, gossamer fog hanging low, light barely sleeping through layers of thick clouds, a steady drip as fat drops hit the roof and windowsill, and I'm reassured, I am relieved, I am inspired by it. Years ago, these prairies were dying. Dry, drought conditions cracked the earth as fields rejected seeds, as if the ground was sickened by life. Creek banks ran dry, home to snakes and big, hairy spiders, but never fish or frogs. Grasshoppers came in waves, and their cousins as well, eating what little the fields had put forth, and we just had to watch as the forests burned. But this year, it seems the sky is racked with grief, for it sobs out great amounts of fresh tears upon the prairies. It has been a long time since everything was so green, so lush, so verdant, so fertile. Such fecundity is welcome, but too much moisture, and everything will just rot right where it stands, and there will be no joy in the rain anymore. The rain is welcome, for our growing season is short. We do not have long to yield our bounty. When the day comes where we meet the reaper, the thresher, and the harvester, our stock will be taken in days of rain. From our earliest puddle splashing, giggling in our galoshes, to our last walk, holding hands with our lifelong love in a spring sun shower that comes to clear the dust off the shining path. I have never cursed the rain, for each thing is fed by the sky, and there are only so many days allotted to us here. Where our growing season is short, there is a long winter coming.
Damn, bro. Cheers.
Cheers.